Nonprofit and philanthropic leaders devote their lives to the service of others, but sometimes they need a little help. Christine Michie has been deep in the work and the play of helping changemakers grow their impact for decades. So whether you're ladling soup at a local shelter or attending a UN peace conference, you need to find the balance between the heavy work and a light touch so you don't burn out. And Christine believes play is at the center of that. Welcome to the PlayFull podcast, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the PlayFull podcast. And I am so excited. Occasionally with the podcast, we have a chance to interview a play expert. We had Dr. Stuart Brown on from the National Institute of Play, kind of the preeminent play researcher in the world, early in the history of the PlayFull podcast. And today, Peter Williamson is on with us, who is, I might be one of the few guests, or maybe the first, who was been paid to play as his full-time job as a professional golfer. And he has since really taken play and made it the core and center of his work. And he's the founder of something called Game Genius. And I want to say welcome, Peter Williamson, to the podcast.
Thanks, Christine, for having me.
So good. So Game Genius is not just about play and play for just play purpose, but also play for good. And I'd love you to take us on a little journey from, I just wove or stated there's some breadcrumbs to drop between being a professional golfer and this conversation here today. What can you tell us about your life playing a sport and then playing it full time and then playing full time for social good now with Game Genius?
Yeah, well, it was always a lifelong dream of mine to play golf for my career. I started playing when I was about 2.5, fell in love with the game. I played a lot of sports growing up, but golf was just the one that got my attention the most. I think it's just kind of the challenge of it and how you really can never perfect it. I grew up in New Hampshire, which doesn't make a ton of sense. You would think maybe hockey, maybe skiing. I decided a sport that I can only play for the 12 months. And I just found it to be a really amazing place to socialize with people, to go see new places. I mean, if you're a golfer at all, you know how much it kind of drives where you might go on vacation or how it kind of adjusts your social circle. And was just really lucky to go to a school that allowed me to kind of flourish in a way, and turn pro right after college, and got that experience of being able to play as someone who's not just a kid who's going out and playing with friends, but actually playing as a workplace. And I got to see communities where I went kind of as the center of the entertainment complex, right? You're the person that people are coming to see, and seeing how that affected people, both culturally, but also how they interacted with their community. And I thought, this is really cool. And if I ever get a chance to kind of step away and think about games or play for outside of just being an athlete, I want to see what that looks like. And so that's the thread that I'll pull is, I took a step away from playing professionally in 2017 or so. And that moment, I wanted to think about, well, where do I want to go in a specific community and see play as a way to connect people, a way to drive some form of philanthropic impact or social good. It was something I wanted to do as I was playing, but never really got big enough to have that much of an influence on different causes. And so I thought, here's a kind of second chance at using play for good.
Amazing. Is there a distinction between sport and sports and play that's worth exploring?
I think there are a lot of different genres of play, and you will find very different people within those genres. Example, like sports has a very particular personality to it. I think especially if you get into certain sports, there is kind of a culture that's there. It is a very social, very kind of forward, oftentimes extroverted space. there are game spaces that are more the tabletop universes, maybe the designer groups that are creating these games, the digital games if you play online or board games you play in person. Those games can be very introverted, right? People are thinking deeply about a system and they put something out as kind of their life's work, right? I really want to think about birds and like why birds are important to me. And I created this game to help educate people around birds. And you're like, that's really cool. But you've also created some mechanics in here that people really resonate with. They don't necessarily have to talk to a lot of people to make that game happen, but in order to get that game out in the world, they do. And so there's this connector piece of, I feel like some games and play and some of that environment is very, we're talking to a lot of people, we're socializing, we're playing with others, and others are, I'm playing with ideas. And I am working, kind of learning from the experience of designing a game or playing a game, either solitaire or with other couple other people. And so I've been trying to blend those two worlds together. I feel like they're oftentimes not overlapping. And so what can I take from the best of sports where you're trying to be your best as an athlete and trying to, break personal records or, compete against others, with this other world of where can games be a mirror for your life? And how can you find this hobby that you really enjoy engaging with? And kind of pull those two things together. That's been my passion project for like 10 years.
So when you decided you wanted to kind of take that inkling and that intuition you had that you couldn't fully actualize while you were full-time playing golf and bring play to others, where did you go to get better at it or learn more about it separate from what you personally experienced, for example, with golf and other play that you had engaged in yourself?
Yeah. So I grew up in a family of educators. People around me are always thinking about how can I make the world a better place? How can I share my talents to support people? My parents we designed board games together growing up. Like that was a thing that we did. And I got to learn how I preferred to learn very quickly, because when you're around educators, they're kind of like, would you like to read a book? And I'm like, I do not. I would rather play this game, or I'd rather go outside. And so I was very attuned to what I was looking for. And so I always found experiential learning was the thing that I wanted to engage with. And that naturally allowed me to think about, well, if I could create experiences that other people engage with, that would be fun. So I was always thinking about, I don't know if you remember the show Survivor. I think it is actually still on TV. But we used to watch Survivor all the time, which had all these challenges that people would do out in the wilderness. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm going to build these obstacle courses. And so I do all sorts of things when I was growing up. And I think got to sense there were certain things people liked and there were certain things people didn't like. And I think that's really helped in me and my instincts for designing games or designing experiences for people. And then when I went through school, I studied architecture and geography. So I was always into places and spaces, right? So placemaking is very geography, and space making is very architecture. Thinking about not necessarily I'm going to build this residential construction project, but more how can I create an experience or a space that people could walk into and really transform. So that was always my interest area. Not something that colleges are thriving at as a major, right? There might be a few out there, but try to kind of make it my own. And that gave me a bit of a foundation for technical skills, learning how to design stuff on a computer, which, as I was going through school, things were really starting to convert from drafting by hand to drafting in CAD or some kind of engineering program. And so just having a little bit more exposure to, I can create a deck of cards for a game overnight, whereas it used to take me multiple days to draw things out. So combine back childhood experience with kind of my schooling, and then my experience afterwards. Those things led to a little bit more confidence than maybe I would have had if I hadn't had that background experience, just taking a leap of faith after a golf career.
I think you told me in an early conversation about being part of a family foundation, a multi-generational philanthropy. So it sounds like little whispers of that when you're just sharing things. You kind of said casually, and it's not uncommon that people who are on the podcast that they grew up with people who care about other people, right? Like that I and me too, and thank God for that.
Yeah.
Tell me about how your experience watching your family be philanthropic and then you being engaged in that yourself, how that wove into what you knew perhaps you could do with play and playfulness.
Yeah, it's a fabulous question because I feel like a lot of people who are in and around family philanthropy are pretty private. It's a
Mm.
pretty non-transparent space, right? I try to do the opposite. I feel like philanthropy is literally means love of humans, right? And so the connection that you have as someone who has the ability to grant fundraising dollars is a pretty strong power dynamic. And so to try to watch people engage in that moment and see kind of like how they interface with the community, how they are really targeting an issue that they care about, and not just like we're doing this thing kind of from our pedestal. Our family's always been really good at making the kind of grant making experience about learning. So,
Mm.
kind of learning about yourself. How can you participate in this process to figure out what you care about and how you might be able to impact your communities. And it's a little different than maybe some other foundations might work, which is we're focused on hunger or
Mm.
homelessness or some particular cause and we're trying to eradicate it or solve
Mm.
something,
Yeah.
right? I think there's always a bit of a give and take, right, where you want your impact to go. But in being a part of a now sixth generation family foundation, both an incredible privilege, but also a really strong exposure to the nonprofit sector and the pain points that they
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
I think that's what has really helped me understand. All right, this is a nonprofit. It's $1 million budget nonprofit, means it has this many staff members. They're trying to do a lot with a little, and they are doing an amazing job. But like this type of grant funding, general operating funds that can support this particular effort at this time really makes a big difference. And being able to see that on the ground is fairly influential when you're a 12-year-old kid getting started with a
Yeah.
family foundation.
Oh,
And now being a little older, seeing that there's more than just the dollar that you can give to a nonprofit. And so I've always thought of play as another form of philanthropy, right? How can you give fun awareness building moments and play to a community to help them understand why best connection is important?
yeah, I love it. I was actually just this week at a conference up in Los Angeles, Southern California grant makers, a gathering of several hundred family, community, and private foundation folks. And our firm, Impactful, does philanthropic consulting, and like everything we do, as is evident from the podcast, we're like always bringing joy, play, and fun into the work. So to meet foundations, meet philanthropists, individual or institutional, and bring play into to try and unlock old ways of doing things, try and create new patterns. And it was really interesting yesterday. The sector, all the sector, including philanthropy, is under attack in a way it hasn't been before. I think the
Yeah.
nonprofit, the 501c3 service delivery organizations are a little more used to, some of the challenges they're facing now more than ever. But philanthropy hasn't necessarily been thinking it might have a target on its back as it does now. But as folks were saying yesterday, let's not conflate whatever's challenging for us about this moment with what's actually challenging for those we support and the work they're doing. I thought it was a really thoughtful point to make. Not that one has to be ranked above the other, but just to remember they're not the same. And our purpose as philanthropists and those serving philanthropy is really to lean in now more than ever in this way. And I got to tell you, Peter, and I know you've listened to episodes, which is how we came to be together. Haven't you noticed, or honestly, I'm thrilled to notice that people doing the work are saying, you cannot take our joy. You cannot take our joy. Tell me how are you seeing more appetite for play, joy, and fun like almost it's almost like this counterintuitive thing in this moment where there are some horrific and tragic things we're facing.
I will preface by saying that I am from the Washington, D.C. area.
Mm,
Would not qualify this location as the most playful,
yeah,
but I would say human connection people are looking for. I
yeah.
think whether it's this intersection of how AI is kind of threatening the ways that we work currently, both for good and for maybe not so good. Um, the various kind of political realities that are happening in the world. I think recognizing that there are different values that are out there that are kind of leading and governing us right now, and that is challenging the ways that people can have free time and
Mm,
voice their opinions and want to play.
mm,
So I feel like there is both a desire to connect with people, but also this sort of like deepening, um, kind of like, where are we going
mm,
question,
mm.
right? And like, should I want to play with
Yeah.
everyone
Yes.
question?
Yeah.
Um, and I am unabashedly kind of like, I want to play with anybody, whether I agree
Mm,
with them or not, try to kind of be a bridge builder,
yeah. Yeah.
but will be very candid in saying it is really hard when you see people that you care about being hurt by different policies or decisions that people are making. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last year or two has really been focusing in on designing games around civics or ways that people can engage in their own communities to make their voice heard, or to understand how to be a kind of like productive member of their community, right? What levers do they have? What can they share that will
Mm.
help kind of their, whether it's town or community or neighborhood, be better. That's been really meaningful and I feel like very timely. And I think in doing a lot of that work, I am kind of baked in this DC ecosystem of of government and politics. And so I see both playful people and less playful people.
Ah, so I'm imagining that guests of ours, those that aren't driving or working out or cooking while they're listening, might be sitting and can grab a pen and are going to make a note. What products or services do you have at Game Genius and your other firm Barometer that folks can get and do something with if they're like, ooh, this guy. I want to get some of this for our organization. I want to get this game for civics, et cetera. What should we know about? What are you proud of that we should be calling people's attention to?
So I would say the evolution of what Game Genius was. So Game Genius was very much a transition away from kind of where I was professionally as an athlete to how can I transfer some of those skills and create experiences, games for organizations that are doing good in the community. And I think what I've learned over the last 7, 8 years of doing that is, one, a lot of people want to create games. They hear games and they're like, this is amazing. Like we could have our own game. But as I said, the capacity of some of these nonprofits are really low. And so you could create the greatest game in the world, but if they don't use the game or know how to use the game, then it kind of sits on the shelf behind them as maybe it's a tool that they can bring out once a year. But I really would love, if we're going to create a game and spend a lot of time together, that not only am I creating the product or the thing that they're using, but also how do you use it, right? Like let's work together on implementation of that game so that it's not just sitting on the shelf. And so I'd say the last couple of years we've really focused down on a couple of projects that we've really invested time into. So an example, we've worked on a project with an organization called the Bill of Rights Institute. They do a lot of educational resources for educators, that teach civics, kind of throughout K-12. And our game specifically, we created 7 tabletop games over the last year. And the goal was to be kind of broad brushstrokes. How can we help the learning in the space be stickier, right? Which to
Hmm.
me doesn't sound as much like I need to remember this fact, but
Hmm.
instead I need to think about the social emotional learning concepts around a game. And so as people are sitting there with a pen and paper, I would think less about what am I trying to teach in terms of content. Instead, think what are those kind of like professional skills or things that you would love people to have at their disposal, right? Really good communicator,
Hmm.
adaptable, They're great listeners. They're really well organized. Those skills that are helpful universally. How can you build a game that has a theme around what you do that kind of attaches into things that are just helpful for people in a wider scope? That's a lot of the methodology that I'll bring into an organization. Is I'll say, you can create a really intense content heavy game, and there are places and spaces for that. They're amazing, basically works of art, right? But they take a long time to do. They're not super accessible to be able to design, and they're very costly because you're going to get someone who's a master game designer that's creating a game that has a deep intentions around players. You're doing a lot of testing. Whereas if you can tap into something that's more universal, one, it becomes easier to use because it kind of fits into more spaces, but it also allows you to sort of share your values of how you would like to interact with people while you play games, right? So if you've ever think of your favorite game, well, I'll ask, what is your favorite game?
I love cards.
What games? There are a lot of games with cards.
Yes. I am currently playing bridge weekly with my mom and dad, and we found out we could play 3-person bridge because there's just 3 of us.
Yeah.
And so we're not sure if we're exactly quote unquote doing it right, but we're having a lot of fun.
I think that's all that really matters in this case. But that's really cool, right? Bridge is a fabulous game. It's very old, but it's a partnership game, right? There's levels of trust that are involved, right? There's a strategy component to it. There are communication pieces that are more abstract, but they exist, right? There is a bidding and bluffing component to it. And so there are things in there that you can sort of pull out of games that you then can drive down an academic learning path. You could drive down a professional development path. You could drive down a community engagement path. And so that's a lot of the work that I've been doing kind of on my other hat, which is called Barometer XP, which a lot of the work we're doing is trying to dissect the science of play and connect them into learning outcomes of some kind, right? How can you be more specific or targeted, create more of an instinct of people, right? I'm going to play this game because it has something that I recognize is a thing I want to work on or learn. And so the combination of Game Genius, which does bespoke games for organizations, and Barometer XP, which does more workplace learning, are kind of the 2 hats that I wear most of my days, but they very much complement each other, and oftentimes we're doing projects in the same space.
Love it. Okay, and so you just used the word bespoke, and previously you gave the example of the Bill of Rights Institute. So it does sound like you're available to engage with individual nonprofit organizations or philanthropists, foundations, to design a game for some purpose they might have. Peter, do you ever find that you can also point them to, like I said, like bridge or chess or Scrabble or things that already exist that they might be able to start using or integrating into their work in a special way?
Yes. And that's, I think, what has changed a lot for me over the last 8 years or so has been, I started thinking bespoke is the way that you would create really meaningful impact inside of an organization because it's custom. It feels like it's their own, right? But at the end of the day, if you can find a game that exists that has mechanics or dynamics, right? The building blocks of the experience or the skills that you need to play it. If it has something that shares what you're trying to communicate to your constituents or to your donors or to your, the community that you want to play with, why build the other thing unless you have that kind of extra amount of time? But we know a lot of organizations don't often have that capacity. So you'd be doing it purely for the fun of we want to do something new. And I always encourage people, if they find some time or if they want to go down a creative path, yes, do it. It's a really interesting exercise to create your own game. But more often than not, you can use a game that exists to get to the point. And there's a term in game design, it's called reskinning, where you are taking a game that exists and you are sort of putting a different theme or concept around it, putting a different skin around the game. And you've probably seen, without knowing you've seen, a lot of versions of that, right? Monopoly has thousands of reskinned particular places, right? It started as like a New York thing, but now there's like Monopoly San Fran, and Monopoly Tokyo, and Monopoly your hometown. That's an example, really good example of how you could take concept and just make it more local.
We have we do board development work, and we have a board bingo game. Often nonprofit executives are frustrated that their board isn't as engaged as they want them to be. And so I'm like, let's put all the things on, these number of squares that you need them to do. It's in their board responsibilities that they signed. So the boring things, they're not boring, sorry. The responsible things like, attending the board meetings and making your gift, right? The basics. But then put some fun stuff in there that you'd love them to do. If I'm on the board of a group that trains kids in Title I schools in the city of Los Angeles to run the LA Marathon, and 70,000 kids have been through the program in the last 35 years. They like each board member to show up at a race. There's a bunch of races that lead up from, a 1 mile fun run all the way up to the marathon. And if you're a runner, you can run, but you can also man an aid station, right? Things like that. And so put that on there. And then, call the CEO and invite her out to lunch, right? There's just like, and then a couple free spaces, and then have them bring the bingo too. So trying to gamify responsibilities that you need them to fulfill. And then, of course, and we're going to make a segue here to ice cream. I use ice cream in lots of settings because, and you're just smiling, just as is what happens every time. It's just, it puts smile. Do you remember that Steve Martin thing about you can't be in a bad mood, when you hear a banjo?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like ice cream is a similar thing, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you step aside and get your ice cream? And I'm going to give some love to Taharka Brothers while you do that, and come back and I'll meet you for some sweets.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, folks, Taharka Brothers, based in Baltimore, not too far away from where Peter lives. And they are a social enterprise ice cream company, have been a friend and fan of the PlayFull podcast for 2 years now, sending pints to our guests. And Peter actually lives close enough because he's in the area to go pick some up, which he did. And that's really fun because there's retail locations in the Maryland area, in the Baltimore area. And then the rest of us who are further away, we take advantage of their nationwide delivery. And it's quite fun. So please check them out. Taharka is spelled Taharka. It's taharkabros.com. And that's the ice cream company that we're so happy to have their support. All right, Peter, you're back with your ice cream, and I got to know, what did you choose?
So everything comes with a preface, I feel like, with me. My wife, as I went and got my ice cream, was like, why am I not on this interview? I want ice cream. So the short answer to the question is I have a peanut butter cup ice cream from Taharka Brothers. The justification is I haven't had lunch yet. So I thought, well, maybe I'll get something with more protein. Feels healthier, right? Like there are peanuts in it. I know that's false, but Taharka Brothers is great. It's kind of a local ice cream, as you're sharing.
Yeah.
That we have a really nice community of like artisan ice cream makers here. We just hosted a gelato truck in our driveway for our neighborhood. It was fabulous, like an idea that I'd never even considered. The ice cream truck that kind of roved around neighborhoods when I was growing up, and I was like, oh my gosh, the ice cream person. Like, why don't you just invite the ice cream person to your house, and then they could stay there for an hour? That seems a lot better.
Oh my God, it's brilliant. I love it. And now I know you have a little baby. Is your baby old enough to be enjoying ice cream?
Depends on what parent you ask. For us, very much so.
Very nice.
We recently did a trip to Maine, which has a very well-known ice cream establishment where we went. I got my 2 scoops of ice cream in a cone, very excited to have it. And the next thing I know, there's a hand that comes in and just grabs the top scoop. And it was, I now have to think about who else is competing for the thing that I'm about to eat. So yes, he very much likes ice cream. We try to keep it at a minimum.
I love it. All right. So, and I have a carton of Keep Your Head Up. And this is blackberry crumble layered with vanilla ice cream. And Tupac was born in New York, but had formative years in the Baltimore area, and I think went to the Baltimore Center for the Arts, and did some of his early creations there. So I believe that is why Taharka Brothers has a keep your head up flavor. Which, here we go. I'm gonna have some.
I like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have, I've had all the flavors by now, and I'm still completely enchanted by them all. You're so lucky you live close. I was telling everybody when you stepped away that nationwide deliveries is really a big deal for a small local company to really embark on that. And supply chain issues galore with a perishable item, and the Taharka ice cream showing up in a hot pink box with 6 pints and enough dry ice to keep it for a few hours on your porch.
Yeah.
But I have had it arrive before, and people be gone for the long weekend, and it can't quite withstand.
Only winter time does that maybe work. Yeah.
So you shared a little with us about growing up. I think you specifically said something about when you were 12. When we eat our ice cream, I'd like to ask the question, what's the scoop on how you came to care? Anything specific additionally you'd like to share with us about kind of how you came to feel and understand that you had a role to play in the larger world, redressing imbalances, et cetera?
It's a great question. As I shared, being around a family of educators, there are already people who care that are around you, and I think that is pretty formative to your childhood. I would say being able to go to different organizations and see the work they do in real time. So obviously being a part of a foundation, we occasionally would go on a site visit, see a grantee in kind of their habitat, their world, and had a couple family members who ran nonprofits themselves, and just seeing it real time and people coming in and engaging with whatever program they have, and just the amount of gratitude, the amount of like care that was in that space, it's contagious, right? Like you see that every day. That's pretty amazing. And then you can also tell that like there's a lot of burnout in the space, right? They're seeing a lot of issues day in and day out, and they're thinking like, I'm making these kind of like topical changes a lot of the time, but I'm not thinking about the deeper systemic piece. And so as a game designer, you are designing a system when you design a game. And so I pretty quickly kind of connected the dots between like, well, if I can design a system or see how systems work, I loved engineering going through school. If I understand systems, well, can I like reverse engineer that into a space that makes people think or question, do we have the right policies in place? Do we have the right people out and doing the advocacy work in the community? Do we have the right representatives? And that I think it's for me very interesting, right? Because the hat that I wear with Barometer is very facilitation forward. So I'm not trying to solve your problem. I'm trying to help you see what to do next. And so in facilitating those conversations, it's very curious forward, right? I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm not, this is what you should do, right? It's more kind of coaching stance, right? How does that make you feel? Or what do you feel like what makes sense? Or how can we come to a consensus point? And it's just, it's kind of taking the system and giving it a life, and then people can kind of like see their system as a visual in a game, and that I think for a lot of people is really helpful. They talk about ideas in abstract a lot, right? They'll talk in circles, they'll come back to the same topic again and again, but when they see it in front of them, they're like, oh, this is where it's broken. And that's a really cool moment for a game designer, right? Because that's kind of what you're trying to get them to see, right? But you can't tell them straight up because then you'll get some resistance, right? And so there's a kind of magical moment with play where when people have that light bulb flip, and I've had that enough times growing up myself where I'm like, ooh, if I can do that for other people, that would be really fun.
Oh man. So you've used the word systems a few times, and I'm thinking, in the parlance of the social sector, and especially over the last, 5 to so years, we talked a lot, say, during COVID and during the reckoning after George Floyd's murder, but the systems aren't working, the systems are broken. And then some people say, no, the systems are actually working exactly as they were intended. Um, they're just not serving everyone. And then just the term systems change. How should we all understand the concept of systems and your ability and your desire to provide tools that maybe highlight places for opportunity for that systems change to be activated?
So this is where I think the magic of the work is,
Yeah.
which I started sharing a little bit about mechanics and dynamics of games. But what I will tell people who, whether they play a lot or a little, I just say play different games because different games are different systems, right? And exposure to different systems gives you both appreciation for what you have that it does not, right? And also opportunities, as you were asking about, of where you may be able to improve a system. So an example is I shared the kind of Bill of Rights Institute games. A perfect example of where a game, you could play a game and as an educator could just like have that moment of like, oh no, is this something I should introduce to my class? We built a game that it's called Regime, and it is all about government systems, right? It has the mechanics of the game are built around what would it feel like if you are in this type of government regime.
Whoa.
And so as students are playing, they recognize themselves as, oh, I am playing in a democracy. So we're voting, right? This is the structure, the mechanic that we're in. Oh, I'm playing in an autocracy. I don't get a lot of choice. There are people that are kind of pushing ideas on me. And so when we played this game at playtesting time, uh, without fail, there would be a student who's like, I love being an autocrat. And I'm like, yes, like that's super scary for a teacher, right? Like, is
Yeah.
that what I want my student to go home and tell their parents, right? Like, probably not. But it's an amazing point to there are some parts of a system that can be fun or enjoyable if you are on one side of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the idea that there are these sort of like mechanics and dynamics that can show you how you might show up or how other people show up is really informative. And so if you can reflect, which I think is where the magic sauce is, right? Like if you can talk about that experience with other people and socialize, that's where a lot of learning happens. And I think that in the last few years has really clicked with the work that we're doing in the sense that like, again, you could play apples to apples, you could play bridge, you could play golf. The way that people show up in those different systems tell you a lot about both the people, but also how other people have interacted with other systems. And so opportunities are endless, right? When you see a lot of systems and you want to cherry pick the best parts of each one, that's where I feel like you then would look at something like a constitution and say, there are a few things that are broken with this as it was invented 250 years ago, right? How can we change this based on our experiences? But if people are very different in terms of the number of systems they've seen, it's really hard to speak at the same level.
Yeah. The current issue of The Atlantic is about the amendment process that the founders specifically put in the Constitution to say, this is not the thing forever. We're creating this amendment process so it can be amended over time, and how that's been kind of
and politicized in various ways.
politicized and kind of co-opted as if like it can't, it happen. Whoa. Okay. So I want to ask you I suspect you still play some golf because that's probably a sweet spot for you. And you've got a baby. So between playing some golf and taking care of the baby, you may not have time for much else. But what do you do to take care of Peter?
Well, the nice thing about being a game designer and playing games all day is you play games all day. So I feel like I do like to practice what I preach, which is to try to make space to play games. I'm always trying to support game designers locally. So if anybody is building a game in the DC region, and there are events where I can go play test and help them kind of build up the game, I'll do that. Um, there are a couple of, labor of love type projects that always give me energy, even though they take time. We run a big puzzle hunt through DC every fall. It's coming up in a couple weeks, where we make this sort of whimsical story, but like put it in some kind of theme. And this year's theme is all around misinformation. So we're having a ton of fun, just like exploring a new idea. I'm a learner personality. So anytime I can be in a space I don't know anything about, I'm always trying to learn the system, but then like, how can I build a game around it? And for me, that's fun. I have recently gotten into baking bread, making ice cream. I started a garden like 2 months before my son was born, which makes no sense. Like, don't do that. Uh, I can't tell you how many plants I've ruined. But yeah, it's always, I see something that can help me understand a system of some kind, and I want to engage with it. So whether it's baking, understanding the chemistry there, or it's making a garden and understanding like how flowers get pollinated, even though I learned it in third grade and don't remember anything.
Right.
Those kinds of things are where I find little joys.
I love it. Well, one of the concepts that I have shared after I learned it myself from a Brene Brown, one of her talks about making sure you have at least one thing you do, quote unquote, for no reason. And the first time I heard that, I couldn't think of anything I did for no reason. And so then I added in poetry as an example. And the reason, of course, is the best one of all, joy. But I'm not trying to get like better at it or get published, whereas it's not a productivity exercise, it's a play exercise. And then I thought I was going to become a bird watcher, but I only went once and I didn't, I didn't see any. So I've decided to be a bird listener because I always hear birds, and the Merlin Bird app has a really great sound ID feature. And so I'm getting better at hearing and knowing birds by sound, which is pretty fun. It suits my patience level a little bit more. Right?
So fun addition.
Yeah.
Have you played the game Wingspan?
No. Ooh.
So it is a local DMV DC area designer, Elizabeth Cargrave, created a game Wingspan. It's gotten very big. Okay. It's one of those games where you look at it and you go, why did it get so big? And it just sort of hit the right time, right moment. There are a lot of birders in the world. Yeah. But what's really cool about the game is if you connect the thing that you're doing, right? You go out, you listen to the Merlin app, you start connecting the names between birds, what they might sound like, where they are in the trees or in the water or in the wherever, right? And then you play a game like Wingspan, which is all about habitats of birds. Ooh. You can connect the dots between this is what bird sounds like, what they might look like, and what they might eat, and why they do so. Ooh. And it like, what's the greater ecosystem like? And it may, turn you into a birder. Like my wife has gotten very much into it. Yeah. But it also just gives you an appreciation for, if you care deeply about something, you can create a really cool game about it.
You'd referenced birds earlier. You'd made that point about this game. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. So whether it's, birds are your thing, or mushrooms, I think was one of our games. If you think about a game, or a topic, it usually can turn itself into a pretty cool game.
Man, I love it. So, do you have a call to action for the audience as we wrap up?
So I would say, if anybody is interested in learning more about kind of dissecting games and getting better understanding of systems, always happy to chat. Yeah. We've tried to build a couple of different types of trainings for people, at least in the workplace, but we're trying to expand into more of the nonprofit worlds and just like schools and things like that. But just giving people a better understanding for how games could help them in their life. Yeah. We're working with that. So I would love, if anybody is interested, feel free to reach out to me. I don't know if you want me to share email here in show notes.
Well, we'll put it in the show notes. Absolutely.
But yes, always happy to chat. Love talking to people who want to play more. And then if you have a challenge, or you're a part of an organization, or you're part of a foundation, right? If you're part of the philanthropic ecosystem in any way, and you are thinking, I wish this could be more playful, reach out.
Yeah. I love it.
There are a lot of opportunities there, and I think ways to do it intentionally, but also have it to be fun.
Oh man, well, your contribution to the field already and certainly to come seems really significant. I'm really excited that we got to know each other and to be sharing your story. And I'm going to be heading your way, and I'm excited to get together in person. I know your district hunt is coming up. People can watch for that in October, and it's just really exciting to hear what you're doing. And thank you for bringing some play expertise to the PlayFull podcast, because I know that folks will really get a lot out of this. So thanks for bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the space.
Right on. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the PlayFull podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time.